Brought to you by MediaTek. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joar, and today is Thursday, October 17th, 2024. And I have the most excellent Finbar Monian here of MediaTek, who's going to chat with us about the new Dimensity 9400. Hi, Finbar. How are you today?
Hi, Miriam. I'm great. It's good to be here with you.
Absolutely. Listen, it's very hot here in San Francisco, but you have a hot new chip that doesn't run hot. So let's talk about it. I'd love to hear more about some of the key points here. You have done the all big course design last year with the 9300. I've been using the 9300 for about a month now. The devices finally came to North America and, of course, some of the Chinese phones as well. And it's been a powerhouse. It's been amazing. So tell us, in terms of this big core design, what's changed? I know that there's lots of other stuff we're going to dive into, but I think this is one of the things that you guys are sticking with that has proven itself, and you're improving on it. So tell us how you're doing that.
Sure. Yeah, as you said, we launched that innovative all big core CPU architecture last year with the Dimensity 9300. And of course, for this tier flagship high performance devices, computing power is very important for user experience, productivity, apps performance, etc. And I think there was some maybe skepticism last year, but I think we proved the skeptics wrong by delivering great performance, but not sacrificing battery life and giving really good sustained power performance. So this year,
indeed,
with the new Dimensity 9400 that we announced last week, we've gone for the second generation of this architecture. So what we've done this year is we've added a single Cortex X925 new ARM core. So this is the latest high-end ARM core. That used to be previously, codenamed Blackhawk by ARM. So we've got a single one of those running at over 3.6 gigahertz, and that's bringing like a 15% IPC improvement compared to the Cortex X4 from last year. We've also maintained 3 Cortex X4 cores to roll out the kind of quad of the X-core architecture, and then 4 of the Cortex A720 cores rounds out the CPU architecture. But I would say there's 2 or 3 more important features. One, we've added significantly to the caches. We've doubled the L2 caches. We've added 50% more level 3 cache. We've added the latest LPDDR5X memory interface at 10.7 gigabits per second. And more importantly, I guess we've moved the whole thing to TSMC's second generation 3 nanometer. So we get performance and power advantages with that as well.
I was going to say, this is a big step, right? Going to 3 nanometer. But also, it seems to me like you've learned from the first design and applied some of those things. And I bet memory bandwidth becomes really critical these days once you're starting to run at 3.6 gigahertz on one of the cores, right?
Exactly. And that's where on-chip level 2 caches and level 3 caches obviously keep more of the operation on-chip, which helps with power consumption and performance. By moving to the single Cortex X925, we get a really big bump in, single core performance, as much as 35% faster compared to last year's Dimensity 9300. And then the overall architecture, because of all of the changes I mentioned, probably gives us, 28% multi-core performance boost compared to last year as well. So, but yes, the memory, both the memory interface and the additions to the caches on chip really help power consumption overall.
And then, of course, going to 3 nanometer on top of that, right? You get some gains that are instant there. Pretty great. So that's one big part. And I think, it's interesting to see how the industry responds to that, because I feel like you guys are spearheading something here with the all big core design. We probably are going to see more of that, is my gut feeling, especially because more and more ARM is moving to PCs, right? And I think that's kind of like where we're seeing that we can spend a little more juice and energy for, more heavy lifting, right? But I'm curious to see what's evolved in AI. We've seen a huge change in what AI brings to consumers, kind of portfolio of tools this year. And of course, a lot of it is being kind of pushed by marketing and stuff, but some stuff has become very useful and helpful, and people obviously expect it and demand it. And, MediaTek's obviously been delivering AI acceleration for what, like 8 years now or something, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So it's not like you guys are new to this, but what has changed since 9300? Like, where do you think you've been able to optimize? What are the trends you've seen that have made you change this or improve this design to make it better suited for, especially for mobile devices?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we've said we're kind of on a 7-8 year AI journey in mobile. The first 5 years, as you know well, were kind of dominated by sort of computational photography and using AI to enhance the camera capabilities. I think last year, this year, were really about the introduction of generative AI capabilities that we talked about with the Dimensity 9300 last year. We were showing, and demonstrating running 7, 13, even as high as 33 billion parameter large language models, some cool stable diffusion image generation.
That was a lot of fun at MWC.
Mobile World Congress. Yeah, we had a lot of fun there. But I think we really feel like now from like this wave of products like the Dimensity 9400 and what's going to come on devices later this year going into 2025, we're really entering what we're calling the agentic AI era. So really turning the AI capability onto a smart AI agent on device. So to kind of, make that happen, we've done a couple of things. Of course, we've moved to the next generation of our NPU, so the on-device acceleration for AI applications.
Right.
That's going to give us, 2x faster image generation for diffusion type models. 80% faster on large language model prompt performance. Again, power consumption, 35% better than last year. And, we'll do, up to 50 tokens per second for large language model performance. So at the base of the hardware, there's, significant boost in performance for AI applications, Gen AI applications, and running large language models on device.
Do you have any idea of what size models you can run now, like versus last year?
Yeah, I think it's, the focus is probably still on similar size models. Like, I think I don't think the industry is focused on really pushing the size of the models much larger at this stage on device. I mean, of course, there's a whole bunch of different things happening in the cloud.
Yeah.
But I think it's more about how do we take those models that we were able to accelerate last year, and our customers deployed some generative AI applications, but really turn them into something much more useful for your daily life. That's what we're referring to as agentic AI. And so one of the big things we announced as part of the Dimensity 9400 is the launch as well of what we're calling Dimensity Agentic AI Engine, or DAE. And think of that as just a software framework that we're trying to help the industry standardize on to, allow OEMs and developers and the ecosystem to create applications that are more agentic, right? Can take complex multimodal inputs and take action on your behalf on device or in the cloud as needed to really kind of make things easier and more convenient for you, the consumer.
Yeah. And I feel like this is one of the things that sets MediaTek apart from the competition, right? You guys are always trying to create industry standards. Like when you did NTN, right? The satellite communication, you went to work with 3GSM and you said, listen, how can we make this in such a way that it's not everyone has their own constellation, everyone has their own network, everybody's deploying it, it's a big mess. Let's try to standardize this. And you've worked with them. And now you're at like, what, a fourth generation of that product, third, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so, it's the same thing here. I think this is very critical because, not everybody's an expert at this, number one. And if they are an expert, they're not necessarily an expert at making it running smoothly on device, right? And so you need that kind of software layer to make it happen. So I'm actually really excited to see how OEMs take this and actually, roll with it, go with it, run with it. And more importantly, how the industry responds and says, hey, this is a good idea. Maybe we should go with this standard. And hopefully everybody's going to be on board soon. That'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, I think we agree completely, right? For this next phase of AI, this agentic phase to kind of really deploy, to me, in many ways, we're almost kind of to the new app store, right? Because all of these apps, all of these applications need to be kind of configured to take advantage of this AI capability. That will only really blossom if developers have an easy path to make that happen, right? So that can't be customized. It can't be, one solution over here, one solution over here. We've taken a first step. We're also working very closely with the OEMs who are the lead OEMs for the Dimensity 9400, so Oppo and Vivo in this case.
Yeah.
And then, we'll see what they deploy. Obviously, it's for them to decide what applications make sense to deploy on their devices. But I think we're open and committed to working with, all of the ecosystem to sort of move this forward to kind of a standardized approach, right? Hopefully we'll be able to contribute to that discussion and that formulation, but it may take some time for that to settle down and evolve. But that's the direction I think we in the industry have to take.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's talk about GPUs and other processing units like the ISP, the DSP stuff. What's changed there? I believe you have more cores on the GPU, right?
I think we've adopted the new IP from ARM.
Oh,
so
that's
specifically,
what it is.
it's the Immortalis G925. It's a 12-core configuration, which is the same as last year's Dimensity 9300. So it's the same number of cores, but of course, the new IP, the new memory structure, 3 nanometer, the new memory bandwidth is all there to take advantage of. And the new IP brings a couple of significant advantages. The most, I guess, significant and noteworthy is the support for opacity micromaps, which is
which is a PC exclusive right now.
PC kind of technology to bring again that kind of PC level gaming to mobile, right? So for people who may not follow this as closely, this is really more about continuing to handle the light reflective kind of images much more realistically on the game. So again, they get more and more realistic. So we have support for that, and we're giving people like 40% or more peak performance, 40% more ray tracing performance, and at the same time we're doing like this with about 44% or up to 44% power savings advantage when you combine all of the features that I mentioned earlier.
Very cool. What about ISP, DSP? Any new things there? I mean, DSPs are pretty much a dime a dozen nowadays. We know how to do that. But ISPs are still evolving, right? Camera megapixel counts is improving. Read speeds on the sensors is improving. So the ISP needs to keep up. Tell us what's going on there.
Yep. I think this year our focus on the camera has been on kind of two main vectors. One is on enhancing the zoom HDR performance, both for still and video capture. So again, allowing much better resolution, high dynamic range over the full range for zooming. So again, exactly, as people want to take like obviously images from things that are very far away, will help improve the quality there, and using some AI techniques, of course, to continue to enhance that. And then we always have a focus on reducing the video record power consumption, because of course if you're trying to record 4K 60 video, that's going to be a high power use case, right? So if people want to record longer and longer videos, I think this year we're saying we're reducing it by about 14%, but that's a big jump year over year for video recording at high quality as well.
Is that mostly due to the 3 nanometer or just a re-engineering of the ISP, or both?
Both. You always get an advantage with the process technology, but we continue to optimize the video engines as well, of course, for low power consumption.
Awesome. I mean, that's, going to be helpful because, also thermals are a big problem for recording video longer, in warm temperatures like right here today. So tell us more about the kind of connectivity side. What's changed? What's been improved? Obviously, MediaTek, this is your thing. Like connectivity to me is where you all started. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, as a flagship, we have to have the latest and greatest technology. So we've done a refresh on the 5G modem. So it's a release 17 capable modem now. So upgrading from release 16 last year. So that brings in some new features, but still maintaining 4 carriers, up to 7 gigabits per second peak rates at sub 6, which is what most people will probably see.
Of course.
And then I think the other major step we've taken this cycle is we've also introduced, as part of the overall platform, a new low power Wi-Fi Bluetooth combo chip that goes with the main SoC as part of the overall solution. And the big difference there is we've migrated from 7 nanometer technology last year to 4 nanometer technology for that this year. So couple of jumps in the process technology. That's going to bring about overall 50% lower power consumption for all of those Wi-Fi, Bluetooth use cases. For something like a mobile hotspot, we can offer like a 25% year-over-year improvement in power efficiency.
Wow. Good.
And then, we layer on top of that some of our, what we call our extra range technologies. These are MediaTek, let's say, proprietary technologies on top of the Wi-Fi standards to help improve the overall range performance. So we can do kind of up to a 30% greater Wi-Fi coverage area with the technologies on here. And on top of that, it's, of course, a full Wi-Fi 7 capable combo, same as last year, but tri-band concurrent. So you can have up to 3 concurrent Wi-Fi bands, giving you like over 7 gigabits per second of peak Wi-Fi data rates. So, we're getting into the crazy data rate stuff now with 5G and Wi-Fi.
That's the title of the podcast. Awesome. Let's talk about a little bit one of the final things you mentioned in your briefing I was on, which is a trifold support. I mean, right now we have one trifold. It doesn't contain a MediaTek chip, and it's kind of hard to obtain because it's very expensive. It's China only. It's very exciting. It's made by Huawei, but I'm very excited. I think a lot of us are very excited with a big question mark over our heads, right? Because when the initial folds were like that. The reality is the bifolds exist. They're here. We've had them for a while. They're proven now. We've had several Dimensity equipped models out there. What are you doing with Dimensity 9400 to anticipate the, I wouldn't say explosion, but we're going to see some trifold devices?
Yeah, so we've built in capability to support that kind of a device if somebody wants to build it. So what that really means in practice is we've got the display interfaces on the chip as part of the platform and the necessary memory bandwidth and display bandwidth to support the kind of pixels and pixel rates one would anticipate natively in the SoC. So if somebody wanted to build like a trifold device with the Dimensity 9400, all the capability is there. Now, of course, we expect, most phones will be in the traditional form factor. We may see some bifolds or foldables or flips, as you say. And who knows what people are going to do in the future. But I think it's future-proofing the platform because these platforms do live on for a couple of years, as you know, right? You mentioned you're just now starting to see some new 9300 plus devices, right? So, those are going to be shipping, of course, for the next year. So we'll see the 9400 family of devices shipping for a couple of years. So who knows what will happen in the future.
Absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to it. One final question for you, since a lot of my audience is international, but also a lot of my audience is based in North America. Last year you promised us some 9300 devices in North America. We got them. What can you tell us about 9400 this year? Are we seeing more maybe?
Well, I think, yes, we're very excited that the flagship tablet has launched globally. It's very exciting to see the 9300 plus devices out there and getting out globally. So it's a good step, obviously. We will see phone launches from Oppo and Vivo coming soon after our announcement. I think Oppo in particular, is going to be moving to bring those devices globally. I think they're going to move aggressively to bring those devices to more global markets. Of course, you understand that doesn't necessarily mean North America, but I think we can expect Southeast Asia, Europe and other markets will start to see the devices. But, who knows what the future will hold, Miriam?
Well, thanks for that. I'm looking forward to finding out myself. Awesome. Well, listen, Finbar, this is a great overview of the 9400. Really great stuff. I'm looking forward to trying it out on a device. Looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks again for being on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Great to be here. And hopefully you're not going to have to wait long to get your hands on the devices. I think they're going to be coming quickly this year.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Finbar. See you next time.
Thanks, Miriam.
And we're back with Ben Schoen of 925 Google. Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So we just talked about Dimensity 9400 with Finbar of MediaTek. And obviously, the phones are trickling in. We've got the X200 series from Vivo this week, 3 phones. And I kind of want to, go into them and, we don't have them. So it's more like speculation and thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these. Have you actually played with the X100? I never did, other than briefly at the MediaTek booth, I think at CES or something. But I've played with previous X series, like the 50, 60, 70, 80. Have you had a chance to use those at all?
I'm actually not sure I've ever used a Vivo phone.
They're a little hard to come around, even as a reviewer,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah. But no, I mean, the hardware on this one looks great. I love I like their designs. I've loved them for a while. But yeah, I've never had a chance to use one. I think the blue, what do they call that blue one? The sapphire blue looks stunning.
Sapphire. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's beautiful. I think honestly their designs are pretty tops. I don't really have any complaints on that front. They've always been pretty good. It's interesting though how the BBK Group's phones kind of seem to be blending into one design language lately. It's a little weird. For a while they were very uniquely different. And I'm not saying, I don't like this design. I think it's a pretty clearly good design overall. I just like interesting. But the specs are cool. In the show notes there, I put a link that, with GSM Arena, the savior of everything for database data stuff. I love them for that. They're so convenient. I put a little comparison and you can clearly see, right, like how interesting it is that they are so similar yet different, right?
Yeah. It's really cool that they've got their whole lineup on the 9400.
Yeah, that's the surprising part. And then if you look at the differences in terms of like camera setup, they're not that different. The Pro is really the big change here, the one that stands out. And so I was like, wow, interesting that they have such a small amount of differentiation between them. What else stands out for you?
I think to my knowledge, these might be the first phones launching with Android 15. Or at least that's what
you're right. Like pre-installed.
GSM Arena's
Yeah.
post is saying. But yeah, that's that might be like the fastest, because of not Pixel, like the fastest non-Pixel launch, because it's such a weird year for this. But
we're going to talk about that because
see.
you wrote about it too. So we have a lot to chat about that. So for me, what stands out is, a few things here that I think we're going to see across a lot of BBK Group phones coming up. And this is just a hunch I have because, they share a lot of parts. 4,500 nits peak display on all three of them. And, one has slightly more curved edges and the other two are flat. There is, of course, the MediaTek Dimensity 9400, which obviously is going to, the fact that we're seeing so many phones that really tells me that people are like manufacturers are really serious about using this chip this year, which is great. In terms of cameras, actually, before we go into cameras, check out the batteries and the charging. I think it's really interesting to see how big these batteries are this year. I don't know if you remember, we'd heard rumors, right? We'd heard rumors that they were going to go like up to 6,000 on some of the BBK phones at least, and we're seeing it here. To be specific, we've got 5,800 for the regular, and then we have 5,700 for the mini, and 6,000 for the big guy. And it's interesting that the regular doesn't have wireless charging, but the other two have, and it's 30 watt, which is their proprietary thing, and 90 watt wired for all three. And then screen sizes, just since we mentioned there's three, the mini is not really that mini, 6.31.
It is not.
Right? I mean, it's fine. And then the regular is 6.67 and the big one 6.78. And they're all in the 1220, P display pixel resolutions, or in between like 1080p and quad HD, which is interesting because we've seen a lot of panels with that. Have you noticed that? A lot of Chinese phones have gone that route.
Yeah, and I think it's a good compromise.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
it probably looks good, right? The pixel density is probably good enough. And then, it's probably costing them a little less money. I think it's an interesting approach.
It's probably better on battery, too.
Oh, yeah. Other than that, we've got IP6869, which I think is another thing we've heard rumored is going to be kind of across the board on BBK Group phones this year. So yeah, I'm excited about these. I just don't know if I'm going to get my hands on one. Last year I asked for an X100, which, as you know, I don't know if you've known or followed Ben Sin on the internets, but he always gets his hands on all the phones, and he was being really loving that telephoto, the 200 megapixel. And so, yeah, cameras are interesting here because it's a very similar setup to last year. You've got this 200 megapixel, like 3.7x telephoto that is incredible and can, reach out to like probably like plus 50x zoom or so without major loss in quality, which is really impressive. And then I've got a large 50 megapixel main sensor and a relatively decent size 50 megapixel ultra wide. And the ultra wides all have autofocus. All the other sensors have OIS. They're not messing about. This stuff is solid. So I feel like this is pretty great. Like they've done a good job here.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the cameras?
I would 100% agree. I think it is great to see the hardware approach because they're not just relying heavily on software to put out a good camera. And I do really love like I said, I have not used it, but I do love the idea of having a 200 megapixel telephoto because telephoto just looks better on the phones for the most part, especially, and 3.7x is like a great middle ground. It's not so far zoomed in that it's not usable, but it's good.
Yeah, and you don't have too much of a gap between the 1x sensor and the 3.7. Like it's there, but it's not like I think BBK is doing some interesting things with Oppo here, like the X7 Ultra last year, right? Where it's like 3x and 6x, so you get like this really consistent because once you get, you can pixel crop the main sensor and get like it was a big sensor too on this X7 Ultra is like a 1-inch sensor. So you pixel bin that down to, or rather crop it down to 2x, and then you get a bit of a gap to 3, but then 3, when you get to 6x, you're really actually like doing the crop again on a 50 megapixel sensor, and then flipping at 5.9 to 6, you flip over to the other one. And you can also have a bit of wiggle room as to when in low light, when you switch cameras. You can say like, maybe that middle sensor at 3x on the Ultra, I don't remember because I took it to Antarctica with me and wrote a story about that, but I can't remember exactly how the quality was, but I think the 6x sensor was a slightly lesser quality sensor than the 3x. So I think at night, they tended to extend the zoom of the 3x to 7x instead of, 6x so that like have the bigger sensor cover more range, stuff like that. So I think it's interesting that they are picking that zoom length, but it's very similar in spec to the X100 last year, Ultra at least, and maybe the Pro. I can't remember. I have to check. Ultimately, though, I think these phones are going to be cool, and it's unclear whether they're coming to the West. We heard good rumors that the X8 series is coming to the West this year, which I think is exciting. I don't know if that's true, but we'll find out. But this, I think it's going to be China only for a bit. Maybe one of them will come to global markets, but don't expect you to be able to pick that up easily unless you're Ben Sin.
Yeah.
So that's one thing we have this week is those X200s. And, I'm excited about that. I think it's cool. I put 2 links in the show notes for you listeners to read up on them. There's GSM Arena kind of did a deep dive on the specs and stuff, as always. So there's one article on the Pro and the Pro Mini and one on the 200 base. And usually they're quite a bit more different. And the fact that the only big difference this year is the X200 base doesn't have wireless charging, that's the only difference, is kind of interesting actually too. So you wrote about Android 15 rolling out, and of course the Vivo X200 is the first phones to ship with 15. I've got 15 on all my Pixels now, at least the Pixels I'm currently using. Basically the 9 Pro XL, the 9 Pro Fold, and I think I updated my 8 Pro as well, just because I'm still using it part-time a bit. And then my 8A, of course, and it's been rock solid. I have 0 issues so far. Been a few days. How's been your experience? And you've been tracking all that, so tell us what you know.
Yeah, I would agree. It's been rock solid so far, and that's probably because it's really not that big of an update. It's just a few little things here or there, but that's kind of how Android updates are nowadays. Some of the more user impactful stuff is coming in QPR1 in a couple months, but it's been a solid update. If you want to see all the stuff that's actually currently new, we did a big breakdown of everything that's like actually in this first update.
Is this something you wrote? that I can link to?
Damien wrote that.
Damien, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll find it and write about it. Because can you give us a quick like top 5 highlight on what are the features in Android 15 that my audience should care about? Because a lot of us, like myself included, I don't do the betas. I mean, I could. I spare pixels. I suppose I could have done the 8A or something, but I tend to just stick with the main line and then upgrade. After I've made sure there's no major hiccups. And so it's been a little while since we talked about Android 15 on the show. Remind me quickly what are the top 5 things we should care about?
So one of the biggest features is the new private space feature, which lets you kind of like you can lock apps behind your passcode, but it doesn't just like throw an app behind that. It also like you can have it use a completely different account. So it's it's basically like one of the ways that Damien put it was it's a second phone in your phone, which is a good description. So that's probably one of the biggest, most useful features.
Didn't they used to have separate users for that purpose before? But I guess it was a bit of hassle because you'd have to switch back and forth. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's still existing. This is more for like just if you have a few apps that you want to put in there. And like you can install apps specifically to that. Whereas with the separate users, you're kind of just sharing everything.
Yeah, I got it.
So it's a privacy thing more than anything. There's the ability to save app pairs, which has existed on like Samsung phones forever, but that's really helpful for like the Pro Fold and the tablet and all that. There's a really nice new menu for controlling the volume. There's a few UI tweaks to like screenshots and stuff like that. On foldables and on the tablet, you can have the taskbar down at the bottom be always visible like it used to be, instead of having it, having to do like the half swipe up to get it.
Right.
And then there's adaptive vibration, which I think is actually kind of cool. Like if your phone knows that it's sitting on a table or if it's really quiet, it will lessen the vibration strength. So that way it's not like, it's not sitting on the table and then blaring to everybody. Yeah. So that's really nice. I don't know how it works because I haven't used it yet, but in theory, that's like a really nice, mature operating system type of feature.
Yeah, that's a great thing. Kind of detecting the ambience noise level and changing even the ringer for the few people. And I'm judging you who still have the ringer on. No, I'm kidding. Sometimes you need your ringer on. I get it. But yeah, for the vibration especially, because some phones can be really loud when they vibrate, especially if they're on the back and it's not a perfect like because of the camera bump and they're like burp. They're literally kind of like doing a weird little dance every time. Very cool. Well, thanks for the rundown. Is there anything else?
So that's the main thing for the Pixel stuff. There's way less if you're not on a Pixel. But also if you were not on a Pixel, you probably already had most of those features.
Right.
But alongside Android 15, there's also the latest Pixel feature drop, which has like underwater photography optimization and theft protection, some better night sight stuff, weather app updates.
Oh yeah, the weather app's cool.
And yeah, just a bunch of like little features that they've either previously announced or are just like improvements to existing functionality. A lot of Pixel 9 stuff also making its way back to like the 8 Pro.
Yeah, I noticed that actually. Yeah, that's cool. And then what do you expect we're going to be getting in the next few months? What is coming?
For Pixel or for everybody?
For everybody, and then maybe for Pixel.
All right. Well, for everybody, a few people announced their updates this week. Like Motorola started rolling out some very weird beta that they never really fully announced. They started rolling out a few updates.
I saw you wrote about that. I was wondering about it.
It was really strange because it completely went under the radar. But there's at least one Motorola Android 15 update out in the wild that's probably a beta. Somebody found a list of Motorola devices that's
finally, because when you wrote your article, we didn't know which phones, right?
That was for Circle to Search.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, so somebody found like on Motorola's website, they have support pages and they list out what versions are available and what's coming. And so they've put together a list of like all these ones that are probably going to be updated at some point. But Motorola has like been really cagey about all of this so far, which
Surprise.
is expected. Asus announced a preview program for the ROG Phone 8. Vivo, and they announced their rollout a couple weeks ago, but it's getting closer. Oppo announced theirs, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little more in a second, right after this. And then, of course, I believe OnePlus is coming too, right?
OnePlus is also, they're teasing it for, they're going to announce more next week. Okay. It's such a weird year, though, with Samsung. Just, they're not doing anything for months.
They haven't announced a thing. Wow.
Yeah, they said next year. It's early 2025.
Interesting. So maybe it's in line with the S25 series. I don't know.
Yeah, they said that the One UI 7's first update will be on the S25. Of course, they didn't say S25. They said next Galaxy, but
no, of course, because like we can't figure that out.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Although
so it's really strange.
Although to be honest with you, we've had name changes happen on other devices and chips and things and surprise us before. So I have a feeling we're going to be in for a few surprises this fall too. So Pixel updates that we should be expecting. Anything exciting?
The next big thing for Pixel will be the QPR 1 update, which will be sometime in December. And that's going to bring a few more features. Probably the biggest one that people are excited about. That's, to be clear, not in this first update, because that's been a big point of confusion this week, is the ability to limit your battery charge to 80%. So you can just turn on a toggle and then it doesn't charge past there, which is great for battery health.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to keep your phone forever, this is the way to go, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially I wish for 7 years. Well, right. But I mean, I I wish it was a bit more granular. I wish you could override it. Like, on cars, on EVs, you know this, you can set it to like a number. Like, I'm not saying it has to be exactly 1% apart, but it'd be nice to do 5% increments, like, because sometimes you might want to go to 90. It's still healthy enough. On EVs, it really makes a difference because at the top of that curve, it takes forever to charge. And, on a phone, you won't notice too much of a difference in time. But I think what's interesting to me is like, it's only 80. Like, it's like, why don't let me adjust it? And more importantly, like, I do like how the adaptive charging works right now, where if you set an alarm, it does the adaptive. I think what they should do is, I'd love to see an implementation where if you plug it in straight up and there's no alarm set, and it's like a weird time of day, like maybe based on your habits, it knows like 3 PM, you never charge, it goes to 100. And then if it's like you set a timer or set an alarm, or it's your normal-ish schedule, then it goes to the adaptive charging set to whatever maximum percentage you chose between, say, 70 and 100. That would be the ultimate UI, I think. And, it can be deep in the settings. I don't care if the average person doesn't know about it,
I can totally see them doing that as like a future evolution of the adaptive charging.
Because the adaptive charging has been really good for me. Like, I feel like it's really saved the life of my Pixel, especially because I always set an alarm on it as a backup to my Google Home alarm, because if the power goes out, my Google Home's not going to go and ring me. Not that the power goes out very much in San Francisco, but at the same time, we live in crazy times. So... Yeah, so let's dive into the Color OS update. You wrote about this. What stands out there for you? Because they seem to be, it seems like they want to make it prettier, but is it deeper than that?
No. So Color OS, it is very pretty. They put a lot of really nice animations in it. They're making a big deal about this new animation engine that lets them run 2 animations at the same time. So like if you're closing one app and you open another, the animations don't stop. They just kind of run together, which is cool if you're Ice Universe. I don't really care, but it's probably going to look it's going to look smoother, which is nice.
Anything that makes Android look more like an iPhone in terms of animation, I'm in.
Yeah, no, it's going to look great. I think it's just it was way overblown because that was like a lot of what they were talking about. So we'll see. I hope it pays off. But the big thing that this update is even in their promo video, it's just like it is iOS. Like there are so many things that are just ripped out of iOS. I've never seen a dynamic island clone on Android that looks so much like the one on iPhone. It's
So question for you. The one that I'm really worried about is what Xiaomi's been doing for a while now with HyperOS, and even before that, it was a toggle in the past on MIUI. Was the terrible thing that iOS does, where you swipe from the top left and you get the notification, the top right you get the quick settings, and on Xiaomi, if you swipe a notification, try to dismiss it, it only goes one way, and
One
the other way
direction.
brings
Yep.
you to quick settings. Tell me that ColorOS isn't doing that, because I'm going to lose my mind.
I don't know if they're going to do the notification part, but they are splitting it just like Samsung is, and just like apparently Android 16 is. I don't like this trend, which is funny because I mean, Android did this years ago. It was split, but it was it was a flipping panel, to where you could swipe down from one side, you get notifications. You swipe down from the other, or with two fingers, and you got the quick settings. But then there was a button to switch between the two.
Right.
I would be kind of okay going back to that, but I really think just having them on the same panel where you swipe down, you get your mini quick settings and you get your notifications, then you swipe down again, you get more quick settings, is just, it's so fluid, it's so intuitive,
I agree.
it's so easy.
It's so nice.
I really hate that it's becoming a trend to not do that. I really hope that Google doesn't do it. Like, that's my main thing.
Not.
But
yeah,
I think all of these Chinese OEMs are going to go all in on this at this point.
Well, for sure. And they're just following the iPhone, and I just hate that. It's like, look, the iPhone is not more usable because of that. Every time I use an iPhone, I get frustrated because I have to actually think, where on the screen am I starting to swipe to get what I want? Whereas on Android, I know that no matter where I swipe, I'm going to get both my quick settings and my notifications, and I can go from there. And sometimes on the iPhone, because I tend to swipe generally somewhere in the middle, because I'm not used to like radically going left or right. If I'm using like Xiaomi right now, and I treat it like my Pixel, and I have my thumb, and I go up there, I'm somewhere in the middle, and sometimes half the time I'm in notification, half the time I'm in the other side. I feel like, you know how keyboards are designed to make the touch areas bigger on the keys that are the most likely to be used? I think that's if they're going to do that, that split should vary in width.
That's how Android used to do
kind
it.
of intent, right? Like,
Yeah.
What are you most like? Do you have notifications going up right now, or did one just pop up? Make that part bigger, right? Like, because that's what you're going to go see. But if you're like in the middle of nothing, the phone's been sitting around for nothing, maybe then give them quick settings. I don't know. I feel like this is a step backwards. I really hope Android 16 doesn't do it. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, the current solution feels best.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Chinese OEMs all go that route, and that would bother me. But then again, the dynamic island stuff, I don't care if they copy Apple. I think dynamic island is a really solid thing. And by all means, go nuts. And
I agree. It's just crazy how close the design is. Like they're being very shameless about this.
They really
But
are.
yeah, I agree on the functionality, because the functionality is fantastic, and it's so weird to me that that's something that you get on iPhone that Android's just never done, because it seems so obvious.
It does. It really does. Speaking of iPhone things that Android is doing, speaking of Oppo as well, there is a quick capture button on Oppo as well. And this is now being shown on one of the social media networks in China, I believe. I think this was on Weibo. Yep. And it's, so we're now getting a feel for what, it's an exec too, so it's obviously official. We're getting a feel for what it looks like. It looks like it is just a full capacitive area, right? And I'm wondering if you know how Apple has a partially mechanical thing there, where the button actually presses mechanically for part of it, and then the rest is done with. Yeah. So on the iPhone, it's
okay. I've only used it once. So
half haptics and half physical, right? It's a real button with a real dome that clicks. But when you it also has a pressure sensor in there, and when you press more, you start getting haptic. And of course, when you swipe, you're getting haptic. It's capacitive, and when you swipe, you're getting haptics. It looks like Oppo's is purely like capacitive and pressure based. So hopefully the haptics are really solid so that, when you press, you it's like tapping a trackpad on a Mac, like, click, you feel it, it's there. So I'm surprised actually Apple didn't do it that way. I'm surprised Apple went through the effort of making a physical key and then doing the rest in haptics. Maybe it's because it's hard to localize the haptics on the button because the taptic engine's at the bottom of the phone,
Maybe. Yeah, I honestly, I 100% thought that it was just haptics. Because my dad just got an iPhone 16, and that was the only time I've gotten to try it so far. Was just I tested it once to show him how it worked. I was like, that feels way better than haptics should feel. So that explains a lot that it's actually a button.
Yeah, it's only for the like the initial one, and then after that, when you push harder and you feel stuff, it's taptic engine. So it'll be interesting to see how Oppo actually does this, and I'm sure I'll get an X8 Pro to review or whatever, like I did for the X7 Ultra last year. So stay tuned on the channel and on the podcast, folks, for my thoughts on that when it happens later this year. I'm actually really excited about this. Honestly, I think Apple's implementation right now is a little wonky. Like, I think they need to polish that. I think the fact that they don't have the actual proper dual detent, like the traditional press part of the way, and it focuses press all the way, and it takes, that should have been the first use, and then maybe they should have started rolling out features, and maybe just stick to the zoom for first. Like, I think they made it a little too complicated from the get-go, and they didn't bring the essential feature that every photographer wants. And I'm hoping Oppo actually does it right. Kind of shows Apple how to do it, while
I'm sure they will.
While also stealing the dynamic island. It's just kind of awesome. We'll see how.
On a side note, I am really glad that they're doing that, because it's always been annoying using Oppo phones because they don't have the double tap
Correct
power button. They have the volume button, I think, but that never works as nice. So I'm glad that they're doing that. I would be okay with that being a trend.
Cool. Well, I'm with you on that one. Speaking of BBK Group, we've got a bunch of other news here. We have a leak of the OnePlus 13 design. So what are your thoughts on that?
I was really hoping it would look a lot more different, but it looks nice. I like that the edges look a little bit flatter. I like the wood grain.
Yep. I like that metal bar that kind of like connect to the right of the camera module that kind of like extend. It looks very luxury, very fancy.
It's nice. Yeah, so it's nice. I can't wait to actually try it.
Yeah, me too, especially if that thing has the specs that they're listing there with the Sony Lydia 808. And we think this is going to be a Snapdragon chip, so we'll see what happens there. I don't know. I'm actually surprised how many 9400 phones were announced already or might be coming. It seems like we're going to get a whole bunch, and more than usual, because Vivo doing 3 of them, like, that was unusual. I wasn't expecting that. I figured at least one of them would be Qualcomm and would come out later or something. All right. And then speaking of OnePlus, you also covered this. We're getting next week, apparently, an Android 15 update for the existing OnePlus phones, at least the 12. Do you know if it'll be the Open as well? Did they mention that at all? Or we don't have any other info, do we?
Yeah, they haven't announced any specific models yet, but OnePlus 12, 12R, and Open seem like the obvious first candidates.
My gut feeling is 12 would be the first because it's kind of like the main line, But I'm obviously we'll let you know what we think of that. What does the rumors say right now? What have they given us so far? Do you know?
So all OnePlus has said officially is it'll have some new AI features, and it'll creatively reconstruct animations, which it's going to be ColorOS. It's whatever everything Oppo did
ColorOS.
Is what Oxygen OS is going to do. It's just going to look a little bit more traditional.
Which
we'll see. Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
I came to not hate Oxygen OS.
Yeah.
But man, I do not like the direction that it's going and just being more and more iOS.
Yeah, that's the thing. For a long time, China was really iOS, copy iOS, copy iOS. And then they finally, like, for a while there, it looked like, okay, they were going back into Android land in a good way. And I think Oxygen OS pre-Call OS merger is probably the peak of that, right? Of course, Pixel, but Pixel is still a branch off of mainline, Android.
Mm-hmm.
I personally love it, and I'm a Pixel
Yep.
user primarily. But I feel like people have to remember. Let's be real here. EOS playing Android like you might see it on a Sony, or maybe sometimes even Motorola has embellishments, and Motorola is pretty pure. A pure Android is lacking a lot of features. Like, you don't really want pure Android anymore these days, especially not EOS, right? So let's be real, right? So, like, everybody's going to customize. So I love what Motorola is doing. I think it's really just minimal enhancements, great. Sony's kind of almost as pure as you can get, and then there is, of course, OnePlus. For a while there was, I thought, very close, but now it's with ColorOS, it's deviating slowly more and more. And then I would like to say that Pixels also deviate. I mean, we're getting to the point where if you're going from a Pixel to a Samsung, wow, it's like, if you're not used to it, you're like, whoa, what's going on, right? Whereas I think there was a time when they were a little closer together. But personally, I'm biased towards Pixels, so whatever. I don't like One UI very much, so whatever, I don't care.
Yeah, no, it did feel for a few years there like Google was like really clamping down and trying their best to make things pretty uniform, but now it feels like all bets are off.
Yeah.
Just all of the sudden. I really do wonder if anything changed behind the scenes on that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Chinese OEMs have gotten more powerful and bigger and have better presence in the West, and they're like, you know what, whatever, we're gonna do our own thing. Who knows? And also, I think it's a cost effectiveness thing, right? Like,
Yeah, could be.
I think that even though I'm not happy that Oxygen OS and Color OS merged, I think the up to now hasn't been a huge bad thing. Like, it's definitely helped them streamline their product roadmap, and I think OnePlus's product quality speaks to that. Do you remember for a while there where we were like, oh my God, around the OnePlus 10 years and even the 11, we were kind of like, you can do better. And then the Open came, and then the 12 came, and then now and the 12R. Like, let's not forget the 12R, because the 12R is a freaking amazing phone for the money. And I was just like, okay, they're back. Like, this is the OnePlus I expect to have. And I think a lot of these economies of scale, in terms of the pricing we're seeing, are related to them being able to streamline processes. And one of them is to share a code base with ColorOS. So, like, we can't be too pissy about that, because we want our prices to be reasonable. And that comes with a bit of a side cost for us, right? So I'm not necessarily against it. Let's see how it develops with ColorOS and next week with Oxygen OS 15. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Speaking of BBK Group, this is kind of a gimmick, but I was a big fan of the GT5 Pro last year. The first Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 phone that landed in my hands in late November 2023. I was very lucky. Realme sent me essentially it's a flagship from Realme. Full on, like, metal frame, wireless charging, the whole shebang, great cameras. If you look at last year's GT5 Pro, it was essentially almost a dead ringer of the OnePlus 12. It was a OnePlus 12 with a slightly detuned ultra wide, and that was the only difference. And the OnePlus 12 came out, and we kind of forgot about the GT5 Pro, but the GT7 Pro is a replacement for the GT5 Pro, and that's rumored to be coming soon. And in fact, Realme teased us with a crazy video of them unboxing it underwater, which tells me that, what I've been saying, like this large battery capacity, IP69, 4500 nit display, I think is going to be a thing we're going to see across all of the BBK Group phones. And that, I can only surmise that by unboxing it underwater, they're trying to push IP69 capability here. What are your thoughts? I mean, have you ever played with any of these phones?
I played with a couple Realme phones a long time ago, but it's been quite a while. I'm interested to see this IP69. I'm interested to see how BBK Group as a whole kind of positions it, because they're kind of hitting up against the law of diminishing returns. Like, it's only going to be a little bit better. It's not going to be better in like if a phone is IP68, you can bring it underwater. There have been many phones unboxed by like carriers here in the States where they did the unboxings
well, remember
underwater.
T-Mobile with Dez?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So like it's not going to be that much of it's not. I worry that it's not going to be a noticeable difference.
No,
I guess
but
we'll see.
Here's the thing: the difference with the technical difference with IP69 is water jets up to 80 degrees Celsius.
Yeah,
that's like really hot. That's like almost burning your skin hot. So what that means is, I don't know, maybe with global warming, this is going to come in handy or something. but the point is, you can, at least the good news now is you could not boil your phone, but you could probably immerse it in very hot water that you can't touch and get a good clean. Like, that at that temperature, you're going to kill a lot of bacteria. So like if you're worried about your phone being a bacteria factory, maybe immerse it for a few seconds in water that's less than 80 degrees, but like Celsius, but close to 80 degrees, and your phone should be okay. Turn it off though, because the battery and stuff, you don't want to like cook it.
That will be,
and you really want
I will be genuinely
like
interested about that.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting to, somebody needs to do that. Zach at Jerry Rig, please do that. Not almost boil your phone. I want to see if the bacteria actually gets reduced if you just dump it in there for a couple of seconds. Because obviously you're not going to keep in there at those temperatures, you're going to damage the battery or something. But it's really interesting. And of course they did a stunt with unboxing underwater, whatever. But here's the thing, Realme UI is a copy of ColorOS. And so, it's interesting to me that Oppo, Realme and OnePlus still have so much commonality in their software, but BBK Group also has Vivo and IQ, EQ, whatever it's called, and those two have their own kind of, Fun Touch OS or whatever it's called, their own variation. And it's not at all like ColorOS, Realme UI, or OnePlus Oxygen OS, But it's also their hardware, though, is pretty much part spin out of the other ones. So it's kind of interesting. I'm wondering when they're going to do the merge, where Vivo is also going to gain the ColorOS code base. Because right now it doesn't seem to make sense to me. Like that they have this kind of like, the problem child Vivo doing its own thing in software over there. I'm not saying they're a problem child. I'm joking. It's just kind of like how I picture it in my head. They're just being cranky and like, nope, we're not going to do ColorOS. Leave us alone.
I wonder if it's a matter of size, since Vivo is actually like a pretty big standalone brand.
It's true, but so is
compared
Oppo.
To like. Yeah, but like Oppo, so Oppo and OnePlus were
yeah, you're right. They're just together now.
Oppo was big, OnePlus was pretty small. Now you have Vivo that's like basically the same size as Oppo. So maybe it makes sense for that in that regard.
So big that they have their sub brand EQ, IQ, whatever it's called. Well, which I played with. I played with those phones a little bit too, which is interesting. But ultimately, again, we're talking about all the things that are coming up. So stay tuned. If I can get a Realme GT7 Pro, I will request one. Last year was China only, and they still sent it to me. And of course, it's Realme UI, so it's ColorOS. So I was able to put the Play Store on there, and everything worked. Even Tap to Pay worked. It was fine. Everything was cool. Had no concerns with that phone once I'd set up. It was fortunately not the case where I could copy over another phone, because it doesn't have all that startup stuff that, the wizard-ish thing that Google lets you go through when you set up a new phone, when you have Place mobile services installed. So you kind of have to like set up the phone in the kind of the Chinese way, and then install your apps manually, and then kind of like catch up from there, basically. Or if you have, since the sync works between ColorOS, Oxygen OS, and Realme UI, you install that sync app, and you copy everything over from your OnePlus 12 or something, and then it just works. You get everything, the settings copy over as well, which is great. So we'll see how it goes. Speaking of phones that are coming up, Nothing Phone 2A Community Edition. So Nothing is really kind of like milking the Phone 2A for everything it's worth, which is not a bad thing. It's a great looking phone.
Yeah.
Yep. And so this is another custom edition. I don't exactly know. Like we had a blue model in April. We had a special edition in May, and initially it came out in black, white, and milk colors. And now we have, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
this was the one that they like took community ideas for, which
Yeah.
is great. I think that was like a really fun thing. I'm really disappointed that this was the outcome of it. Like I was really hoping for something like really fun and unique, but it's just a glow in the dark phone.
I was
Which
gonna
is
say,
cool.
is that the one that's in the
cool.
video below? Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like that's a cool idea. I like the idea of a glow in the dark phone, especially with their design language. But I also feel like if you're gonna pull ideas from your community, there's got to be better ones than just a glow in the dark phone. But
I agree with
it's
you.
going to be fun regardless.
But it's perfectly in line with Nothing's MO.
Yeah.
Right?
But yeah, that's the thing. It's in line with their MO. I wanted to see the communities.
Yeah, well, you know, they're gonna filter that, right? Somebody in the community, it's very possible that somebody in the community came up with that idea. Like, I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're
Yeah,
like,
I'm
okay,
sure they
this
did.
is the one, right? They probably, but honestly, I like what I'm seeing in this, the second video, and the link I'll put in the show notes here, GSM Arena again, where it's a mint color, like what you'd expect if it's gonna glow in the dark. It does really look great as a mint color. And then, of course, the glow in the dark part is it's kind of over the top, but I dig it. If I can get myself one, I would totally rock that. Because especially since I don't have a 2A, I have the I have the 2A, but I don't have the didn't they do a 2A plus or something?
Yes, it's so
that's the one I don't have.
Confusing. They have the 2A, the 2A Community Edition, the 2A Special Edition, and then they have the 2A Plus, which has a different chip and a different camera and is $50 more.
Right.
It's too much. This is
really, just a 2A.
Really
this is not a 2A.
Yeah, this is just a regular 2A. I really love the 2A. I think it is one of my favorite phones of this year.
Yep.
But man, this is overboard. They're doing too many here.
And then CMF Phone 1, which was amazing. Fantastic for the money. Yeah. Like, I'm like, how can you pull this off? You made 4 phones in 1 year, like saying September to September. Since, well, it's October now. So October to October. So you did the Phone 2, then you had Phone 2A, then Phone 2A Plus, well, and then the Community Edition of all colors. And CMF Phone 1, like what I mean, the only thing that CMF Phone 1 is missing to me to daily drive that thing is Google Pay.
Yeah.
You know, NFC for Google Pay. And
but also for $199.
Like, holy crap, the camera is good.
Yeah.
The battery life is exceptional. The performance is super smooth. The thing looks like a rock star. People, every time I pull it up, people are like, what is that? I've got the blue cover on mine right now because they sent me all the colors. But they did the orange and
then put all the blue components.
They didn't send me the orange. They sent me black, blue, and white, I think. And I've got the blue on there. Yeah, well, I was not on the first round. And Jane was kind enough to hook me up later on. But yeah, it's a great phone. I think that people could be well served with that phone if they had NFC on it. Hopefully they make a CMF Phone 1 Plus with NFC for $10 more. $19 more. Come on, Ben, you're on board. I know you are. You are on board. You would dig that, wouldn't you?
Sure.
You know they would. Thanks. I'm glad you agree. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Oh, okay, some rumors of that. So how much do we know about this Galaxy Z Fold Special Edition? I've seen rumor after rumor after rumor that it's coming soon, rumor that it's coming after Snapdragon Summit next week. So now making me wonder if it's going to have a new chip in it. Like, what, you've been following this more since you're 9 to 5 Google and you breathe news every day. What's the deal? What's the deal?
This one has been a confusing roller coaster because it started off as like the Pro and then or the Ultra and then it became the Slim. But basically, it's a thinner Galaxy Z Fold 6 with a bigger screen,
right? Less crease,
probably a 200 megapixel camera, and then yes, the rumor this week was less crease. But it's only going to be sold in China and Korea, which is
for
awful.
sure. Well, Korea means that it'll have Google Play services, and it means we'll be able to import it.
Yeah, but I want them to. Okay, realistically, this should have just been the Fold 6. Like 100%. Everything they did on this should have just been the Fold 6. There's no reason.
But I guarantee you, it's released.
I would have loved if they just.
Yeah,
easily. But I also would have loved if they released what they're doing on this. You know, do the bigger screen, do the 200 megapixel camera, do all of that. Release it for $2,000 and then do, as everyone has been asking them to do a light or whatever Fold 6 FE. FE for 15 or 16 that, maybe lacks the S Pen, oh yeah, this one also lacks S Pen support, which is
whatever.
a choice.
I mean, I know for some people that's a big deal, but I don't care.
Yeah, that's like their one like standout thing though, because no one else really focuses on that. So,
well, the OnePlus Open technically has pen support, right?
We know that, but does anyone else know that? Because they don't talk about it.
No, in fact, I forgot to mention that in my review. I had to append my review about it. No, that's a good point. Let's see what else we got. Oh, okay, so here are some solid real products for once. Like we've been talking about products that are coming, rumors, OS upgrades, but Apple launched a new iPad mini 7th gen, and a lot of people are pissed off because it's a very minor upgrade. The only thing it's getting is essentially an A17 Pro chip. A reminder, this is the chip that was in the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max last year. And then, of course, it has support for the new Apple Pencil Pro, and it's $499 for 128 gigs. And honestly, this is no offense to anybody buying this, but why the hell would you bother? Like, buy a real iPad. It's a great deal. It's cheaper. It does more stuff. And if you need something that's 8 inches, buy a folding phone, okay? That's just
I mean, I can get behind it. It's because it's $500.
It's a little much, honestly, for what it is.
It is probably a little bit much, but I can get behind it enough. Like, I have on a couple of occasions wanted to buy an iPad mini for my wife. But every time I've seen them pop up, I'm like, it's been like 3 years since the last one. I'm not going to buy it because I'm not going to spend $500 on a 3-year-old tablet. So it's nice that they finally updated it.
No, it's good that they updated it, and I don't think the iPad mini shouldn't exist. I feel like it should be priced even more competitive than the regular iPad. But that's not what Apple's done since day one, and they're not going to change that, and I understand it. But I feel like I don't know where the value prop is when you're only getting 8 inches of screen and I know people are not going to look at the folding phones. They're on their iPhone and there's no folding iPhone. And I get that, but I'm just saying, like, it seems to make more sense to me to buy a Fire tablet for 8 inches. And then, if you already have a phone, get a folding phone and get that 8 inches. If that form factor matters to you, I think there are other options that are much cheaper, Fire, and much more expensive, folding phone. And I personally think that, considering the size of the regular iPad is barely 10 inches. It's only I know it's not.
I think
it's not a huge difference. It's like if you're going from an iPad Pro 13 to this, I get the difference, but it's almost the size of a regular iPad, or the iPad is almost the size of the iPad mini. And so I'm like, why don't you spend a little less money, buy that keyboard case for the iPad, the regular iPad, which is really great because it's actually regular size. You can actually really type and use it as a little mini laptop, and you spend less money on it. I don't know. I guess there's a market for it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be updating it. We'll see.
Yep.
Maybe they'll tell us one day how many they sold. They will never tell us.
No, they will not.
Narrator says they will never tell us. Speaking of Fire tablets, we got a whole bunch of new ebook readers from Amazon, the Kindles. What are your thoughts on those?
I'm glad they finally did color. I love that they did. I don't know if wireless charging is new. I do not follow these very closely, but I love that they have wireless charging in them.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Wow, that's cool.
Because I have a couple of the books e-readers, and I loved using those. But I was like, man, I wish I could just put this on my wireless charger while I'm not using it. I always came back to it dead after a month of me not using it. But no, it's nice. I'm glad that they made all these updates.
So we have a Color Soft Signature Edition, which is the first color Kindle. There's a new Kindle Scribe Note Taker. There's a faster version of the popular white. I saw somebody post a video of how quickly the screen refreshes on that. And wow, that is fast for an e-ink display. And then there's a new entry-level Kindle. And you said that all of them have wireless charging, even the entry-level?
I think it's just the Color Soft one.
Just the Color Soft.
I'm not sure if the rest of them do. I think all of them got the faster screens, though, except maybe the base one.
Cool. Well, for those of you,
the base one got faster ones too.
Oh wow! Okay, cool.
Maybe
I love the colors I'm seeing here.
Yeah, maybe not the same speed, but yeah, no, I love the color. I really wish that Kindles were like the books tablets, where they were actual tablets, because I would 100% have one.
Yeah, that's the thing. I do not read enough to justify having, but at the same time, I understand there's a market. People love their Kindles. I'd be more likely to, like, I have one of those TCL phones right now, one of the Next Paper phones. They just came out, the quote unquote higher end of the budget phones they have. And honestly, you put that to black and white and it looks freaking awesome. Like, I could totally dig that. Do you have it there?
Yeah, I have the tablet, the 10-inch.
Oh, you have the tablet. Yeah.
This.
And it's really good for reading. Yeah. So I think that personally, like, I as you said, with the books one, it's like, give me at least like more than just e-reading. And I know for some people that's the whole point. They just want an ebook reader. They don't want anything else. But for me, it's like, if this is running a pretty much Android, that, like, might as well give me the ability to run my Instagram feed on this thing, even if it's black and white. Like, I don't understand, like, why you, like, having some what is it called, like, some layers here, having some carryover between devices is not a bad thing,
My favorite use case for the e-ink tablets is honestly just recipes, because then I can just sit it down and it doesn't use any power because I'm not turning anything. I love it for that.
That makes sense. Well, listen, we've covered everything. Do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, all your social media handles? Tell them about your stuff that you do at 9 to 5 Google, etc.
Well, yeah, you can find me on 9 to 5 Google, doing news every day. And then you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, etc. At Nexus Ben.
Nexus Ben, folks. Just go looking for Ben. Ben is awesome. We like having him on the show. Thanks for being back on the show. And folks, you know where to find me. I'm at Tankerl, TNKGRL. Like the comic book character, just drop the vowels. That's my social media handle on Twitter, on Instagram, on Threads, on Blue Sky, on Mastodon, everywhere. I'm not very active on Blue Sky and Mastodon, but I will post the podcast there every week. And if you want to comment, please do. And if you want to comment on the other social media and include Ben, please do. Let us know what your thoughts are. Any corrections, any ideas that came up while you listen to the show, we'd love to hear it. And as you know, there's a YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/Mobile Tech Podcast. You can subscribe, like, click the bell, tell your friends, comment, all that good stuff. I put some videos up there of hands-ons and unboxings from time to time, so keep an eye on for that. The podcast itself lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. That's where, you can subscribe if you want. There's buttons for all the major, podcast apps. And of course, we're also on Spotify. There's an RSS feed if you want to do it the old school way. But please subscribe. And if you especially if it's your first time here, and if you have friends who think you might be interested. Finally, there's a patreon.com/Tankerl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. The Patreon is very simple. $5 a month gives you access to a video version of this podcast where you can see us hold devices and see our faces and our reactions and all that. And you get it in advance from the audio. You get it a day early usually. And and it's $5 a month for every week, a video version of the podcast in advance. So consider that. There's other tiers if you can't afford $5 or if you want to spend more. Check it out. Patreon.com/TNKGRL. If you can help me, that would be great. And if you don't like Patreon, there is a link in the show notes to a PayPal. You can click on that and make a one-time donation or whatever you think might be worth it. So thanks so much for your support. And thanks again to MediaTek for being our sponsor this week. MediaTek, the world's 5th largest global fabless semiconductor company, powers more than 2 billion connected devices each year and is a market leader in developing innovative systems on chips, SoCs, for mobile device, home entertainment, connectivity, automotive, and IoT products. And thanks, Ben, again for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll have Ben on the show again at some point in the future, folks. And of course, we'll have a podcast next week, and it'll be from Hawaii. So stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.